Hello, and welcome back to The Secret Life of Science Fiction Authors, a series where I highlight a given science fiction author and give a potted history of their writing career and a little bit about their secret life, their private life, their day job, in a sense, and highlighting anything that is interesting about them or not, or just basically things that many many readers would not have known at the time that they were writing. And this week I am highlighting James P. Hogan. And he was born James Patrick Hogan, 27th of June, 1941, in London, and grew up in the Portobello Road area. He died 12th of July, 2010, at his home in Ireland of heart failure. He was 69 years old. Now, he went on eventually until his death in 2010. He wrote about 28, 29 books and a number of collections of essays as well as short stories. But his first book was written in 1977, entitled Inherit the Stars, and that became the first of a series of the Giants series, or as I originally knew it, the Minervan Experiment. I originally read the Inherit the Stars in paperback. I think it was a Ballantine paperback. I couldn't find my copy here at the moment, but it's got this really great Darrell K. Sweet artwork where astronauts find an ancient human skeleton in a spacesuit on the moon, and sort of things unravel from there. They find out that where the asteroid belt is, there used to be a planet, and then they find a buried spaceship on Ganymede, on the moon Ganymede, and they call them giants, and a ship shows up with the giants on, and they've been in sort of light speed, so they had time dilation. But it goes on from there that the human race was, in a sense, a bit of an experiment and so forth, and that the giants, and then there are other humans at another location in the galaxy. I won't go into too much detail, and I don't even remember that much detail as well. There's 5 books. There's Inherit the Stars, the sequel, Gentle Giants of Ganymede, then Giant Star, Entoverse, and then in early 2000 he wrote Mission to Minerva, which I have not read yet. And as I say, he wrote about 26, 27 novels, fix-up novel, well, almost 30, I guess, and then plus the short story collections, the essay collections, and so forth. Other ones that I would like to sort of highlight is Code of the Life Maker, where a robotic species of life form crash lands on, can't remember which moon now, but one of the moons in the solar system. But it's an interesting concept where there's sort of a male and female that they share the code that's needed to create a new robot. And then there's an alternate history one that is quite fascinating called the Proteus Operation, and it's hinged around World War II and Hitler. A new near future novel called Endgame Enigma, where it's riddled with sort of conspiracy theory and but interesting. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was extremely well written when I first read it. Uh, but yeah, and but let's go back to his sort of personal life. And as I say, he was born in London, and he studied electrical engineering, electrical and mechanical engineering, became a design engineer. and he eventually was an international sales engineer for Honeywell, the corporation. And but by the mid-70s, he'd relocated to Boston, Massachusetts, and worked for Digital Equipment Corporation, a computer company. Now, there was a bet in the office that he couldn't write a novel, so he took up that bet. And he would come in early in the morning and probably stay a bit later in the day and use the typewriters. And he wrote Inherit the Stars, and it was published in 1977. And by 1979, in 1979, he began writing full time. And but yeah, and it's just he just went on from there and writing. There's a lot of controversy surrounding James P. Hogan, uh, but we'll get to that in a moment. I just want to sort of talk about the sort of style of writing. He was sort of a hard-ish science fiction writer. But he did mix in other things occasionally, a bit of fantasy. Uh, his big thing was that it was more of the how scientists did what they do, do what they do, or however you want to phrase that, uh, and questioning things, like questioning uh, long held scientific beliefs, and um, in a way that it may not have actually. There was a piece missing in the equation, in a sense, and what was thought to be uh, a scientific rule or fact turns out not to be actually that way. It's something else. And that it's a lot of or several of his stories hinge on that, and they are very male orientated stories as well, um, and he can be a bit tedious at times, a bit convoluted. But I always found the books that I've read. There's approximately 7 or 8 that I haven't read, and that's the latest ones. But I read all of his early novels, and I thoroughly enjoyed them, and I hope to go back to them. And I definitely want to go back to the Giants series, and I knew it as the Minervan Experiment. I read the Ballantine paperback, but I then read the Gentle Giants of Ganymede and Giant Star in an omnibus book club omnibus called the Minervan Experiment. Um, and yeah, he just he wrote a lot of essays as well, and this is where you get into some of the controversy. He began to be a proponent of Immanuel Velikovsky's catastrophism, and he started, or he wrote at least one essay to in support of Ernst Zundel, the Holocaust denier, and Hogan began to write that it either didn't happen or didn't happen the way it was. There's too many holes in the story and everything like that, and it just it his arguments I don't think really hold water, but anyway. That's the downside of him, and also too another big controversy was AIDS, the AIDS epidemic. He denied that. He was one of the proponents of saying that HIV was not the cause of it, but that pharmaceuticals were the cause of it, and that goes back to his questioning authoritarianism, like the powers that be, and you do see this questioning in his stories, and but sometimes it does get a little tedious, that little part, but he doesn't throw in like I do want to say, at least anything that I've read, he doesn't throw in things like saying that the Holocaust didn't happen and all this kind of stuff. There's none of this stuff in there um, that I remember seeing, and it'll be interesting to now knowing, because when I first read his books, I didn't know anything about this type of thing, and it was later, after I'd read a whole bunch of his novels, a number of his novels, that I began to learn about his little pet peeves and things like that, if you want to call it that. But yeah, it's James B. Hogan, a sometime sort of hard science fiction writer, but more about how scientists work, and I guess think is I guess a good way to put it. I've read, as I said, up to probably sometime in the 90s, everything that he wrote, and anything after that, I've hardly read anything. I did read a year or two ago one of his last books, a very slim book called the Moonflower, I think it was called, and it was not great. It was interesting. There were interesting bits about it, but it was not great. And so, but I will be interested in rereading, first of all, the Giants series, and then everything else in chronological order, including short stories, if I can get a hold of them. Anyway, have you read James P. Hogan? Do let me know what you think, and also too, if you're interested in this series, who would you like to have me highlight as an author? I do have a number that I have sort of slated, but as I say, it's a secret life, but sometimes not so secret. Like, it's not gonna. Some things are gonna be a surprise, or was a surprise for people, for the authors, and others are sort of, mundane, but mundane in the sense that they did have a day job. They may not have, you know, written full time and made a living from the science fiction writer. They continued to work a day job, even so, or they had a very interesting day jobs before they started writing. Anyway, yeah, if there are some science fiction writers that you would like me to highlight, do let me know in the comments. Thank you, BookTube.